Thanks, Marshall. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Q&A. My name's Gary Guru. I'll be hosting, and Paul Higgins will be driving documentation for us. I don't have a lot of, or actually, I don't have any announcements. I think there was a ton of announcements last week, so hopefully you guys got your fill and aren't looking for any big announcements today. Let me pass it over to Angela if there's anything that she has to announce. I know there was a bill that went in yesterday, I think.
Yes, and the problem tickets are up to date, I believe.
All right, and I don't know that we have anyone from CDE with any announcements. Oh, we do have Dominic from the SPED department.
Yeah,
If there's an
just thanks to Marshall's editing wizardry, the roadshow recording is now available on the YouTube channel. I'll drop that link in the chat right.
Great, thank you very much. First question, Q1 is from Chris. You have 3 students who SDNR records you cannot create or update, and you're receiving this SDNR 0317 student enrollment record in a previous year, not exit. None of these students have open prior year records. The affected students have all the CCEs which cannot be cleared due to the error. I submitted a ticket yesterday and not heard back. Chris, yeah, I sent up, I started seeing these yesterday, and it's not every student, but there's a certain select group of students. I don't know if select is the right word, but where this error is occurring when you try to exit them out, saying that they don't have a previous year exit when they do. And so this morning, when I saw that error was still happening, I did escalate to the developers, and we're waiting on a known issue ticket. So this is a known issue, and as soon as that gets created, I will link your ticket. I believe I have your ticket to the problem, so you will be notified when it is resolved. And I believe it will be a fairly quick resolution, because we did talk about it in this morning's meeting. Stephanie Q1, if courses for a CTE pathway were taken out of order, in this case, the capstone was taken in 23-24, but before a remaining concentrated course in which they finished this year, the student received the CTE completer record last year due to the capstone, but this year is wanting to be extracted from the student information system and posted to CalPEDS, causing an error SCTE 098E1. What is advised in this case? Leave the 23-24 record and not post anything for 24-25. What is that error? I think I saw a couple of those tips. I don't remember.
It's when you claim that the student completed the pathway this year, but the capstone course isn't available.
Thanks, Karen. That's what it is. All right. Yeah, so you have to put the capstone course with the SCTE record in the same academic year. They did the capstone course last year.
So they just have to replicate it, though. Unfortunately, that's the only way to do it. If the student completes a pathway this year, but they took the classes out of order, they need to replicate that capstone course to show that they completed it this year. So
They'll
if
put it in again
yeah,
for this year?
yes, because that's the only way to
Yeah, that
report.
really is the only way to do that, huh?
Yeah. And
Okay,
so if that class is still active this year, if you have that active class being offered, you just insert the SSID of that student in course data. At least that's the easy fix for it.
Okay, thanks, Karen. And hopefully that answers your question, Stephanie. Yes. Question 1 from Ethan. If a student is expelled, but the expulsion hearing occurs after the last day of school, what should we use for the duration? Also, is it okay to use the expulsion exit code on this year's enrollment, or do we need some sort of one-day secondary one over the summer on the date of the hearing? You don't need a secondary enrollment. Student is expelled. The hearing occurs after the last day of school. Well, the incident has to have occurred during the enrollment So you still put the incident, and you could still put the expulsion. Paul's looking up something here that might be helpful.
There is something on the CalPAS FAQ. If you look for incident, or I just saw that earlier. One moment, let me find it.
Okay.
Use keyword expulsion. And then there should be something about how to report those days.
I don't think
Graphic
the
version.
day of the hearing shouldn't impact the reporting of the record.
No.
Certainly you have to wait until you have the hearing to know the discipline. You know it's an expulsion already, so you can report that now. The date of the incident, as Gary said, and I think the question left is what is the duration? And there are FAQs. So I would reference the FAQ, but I believe it's for the rest of the school year if the student doesn't enroll into another district. So being that it's the end of the school year, it'd be whatever days until I think the next school day starts. But we could look up the guidance, but there is, I think, clear guidance on this.
Paul, if you jump back over to the FAQs. Are you on the FAQ page? There you go. Yeah.
I was on the
Um,
FAQ page.
Yeah, there you go. And then search for CERT 127. There, that one, if you want to copy and paste that in the answer. This is the one he was talking about, where you report the incident the day it occurred, but then you could report the expulsion the following year result.
Perfect. Okay, and that's been posted to the chat box. Okay,
Quite
Q1.
sure that, yeah, sorry, I'm not quite sure that is exactly what Ethan's asking though. So Ethan, if we didn't quite nail that, go ahead and put it in a ticket and we'll try and follow up with you.
Okay, Q1 from Angela. For work-based learning, WBLR records code 60 transition work-based experience and code 65 transition classroom-based work experience. Should LEAs report all students with an IEP or only those who have or on track to earn the Special Education Certificate of Completion? The CalPADS code set in Flash 229 indicates 60s and 65 are for students who have an IEP, but the work-based learning measures for the CCI, specifically students with an individual education program IEP and who earn a Special Education Certificate of Completion, specify students with an IEP and a Special Education Certificate of Completion.
Sorry, I don't have anything to add on this one. I'm sorry, I don't know.
That's okay. I believe it's all students with the 60 or 65 and an IEP would be added. I remember, or the ones that have finished. And Judy also says all students.
So I think you would report to CalPADS all the students who have an IEP that did complete either 100 hours or the equivalent of 4 semesters of courses, depending on which course code you use. You wouldn't report all students if they haven't satisfied that criteria. They would have to satisfy the criteria for 60 and 65. But if the code sets, and it does, I did double check, as well as Flash 299, don't list the Special Education Certificate of Completion. They only list the IEP requirement, then that's what will be validated in CalPads. It could be that when they pull that data to calculate the college and career indicator for the dashboard, they also include information on a certificate of completion. But it could be that that is not the case, because I do think we're interested in learning what the outcomes were after secondary education for all special education students, regardless of whether they got the certificate of completion, a standard diploma, or any of the other ways that they may exit.
Thanks, Matt. And Rebecca from Fresno adds, for CCI students with an IEP and earn a special education certificate of completion are considered for this measure. Thanks, Rebecca. Question 1 from Charlene. Regarding Sunbucks, there is a paragraph in Update Flash 297 revised mentioning LEAs need to submit students ages 0 to 5 who are directly certified to the EDCS. Could you advise where we could find the direct certification list for students in that age group?
Would that be the county match? I mean, I don't know anything about the rules about the county match, but I know that it often differs from the state match.
Charlene, we might need a ticket on this that we can escalate because Paula's not here in the Q&A today, but we might need a ticket for this that we can escalate to the CDE to maybe follow up for you. Q1 from Jennifer. Hi, I'm missing a meet record for a student whose parent declined special education services, which made the student no longer eligible. I understand a meet record is still required regardless of the outcome, but in this scenario where the student was found eligible but the parent declined services, should the evaluation outcome code be 20 eligible or 25 not eligible? I want to make sure we're reporting this correctly.
In this situation, it would be not eligible.
Okay. Thanks, Dominic. Q1 from Pam. What end of year report shows students who took the dual enrollment classes? I would look at the 3.10 and 3.11 reports. One is the high level and the 2 is the student list. Oh, Rebecca also says that. Q1 from Jamie. I keep getting a CRSC 0686 and SCSC 013 and year 1 error, and I want to know if you have been getting any service tickets to this. My numbers keep updating every time a DD is run, and I cannot figure out what the issue is. I haven't seen this as an issue. No enrollment for a course section.
Now, real quick, have you been uploading complete files or just incremental updates? Because if you're doing incremental updates using the CRSC or SCSC file type, you're going to be overwriting data unless you are being very careful about your operational keys for campuses and that sort of thing. So be careful about that. Okay, complete files, good.
So I don't think this is an issue, but this may be one that we need to dig in a little farther. So if you want to put a service ticket in, and then you can ask for me, or we can take a look, so we can actually take a look at the errors and dig into it. It's usually pretty easy once we start looking into it to figure out what's going on. Okay. Okay. Q1 from Soraya. If our LEAs are asking for support with gathering historical program information for their new 25-26 students, GATE and homeless, for example, what CalPads functionalities can we, as a CalPads administrator, employ to assist them? You can do some ODS extracts of the program records. I think you can, is that the one that they added the story on? I can't remember. There was a button that you could press, check on to a checkbox that you could check in if you wanted historical records. But I can't remember, was that the SPRG extract or was that a different one? There's so many. Oh, okay, not that one. Any ideas if they wanted to
It's-
see?
Yeah, it's only going to pull the ones that you've submitted. So it's not
Yeah.
going to report program records for other schools, districts.
I think we've had people ask for that, but it was haven't got to doing
We
that.
no, we can't do it. It's legally.
Oh, can't do it. Okay. Q1 from Tiffany, SPED related. I have a couple of students populating on our 16.21 report as overdue for a plan review and or reevaluation. In one case, the last re-eval held was by another LAA who did not identify the meeting type as both a plan review and a re-eval. The student populates as overdue for their plan review with no pending record. In the other case, the student's re-eval was held late by their previous LEA with no delay code entered. I am unable to enter a delay code for the student as the record does not belong to our LEA. The student is populating as re-eval held late. Thank you.
So for the first one, you can add a meet record from your LEA, like you don't have to have ownership over the enrollment at the time that meeting was held, and just indicate it appears it was missing a plan review indicator. So you can just add that meeting record with the same meeting date and the plan review indicator marked as a yes, and that should bring that status up into whatever it would have been, whether it was timely or held late. And then for the second one, that one you don't need to worry about. You don't need to change anything. It's going to show as reevaluation held late until the next reevaluation is held. But there's no real consequence as far as like timeline noncompliance. The LEA that holds the meeting and is responsible for the enrollment, that's where the responsibility for timelines lies, not with a student coming from another LEA with a meeting that has already been held, but it was held late with no delay code. You're not going to be accountable for that.
Thank you. Q1 from Larney. We have a few SPED students that were no-showed. What report number should I verify that they were included, and what other data points should I verify? Should I verify that their SDS is eligible but not enrolled? These students are currently not showing enrolled in any other LEA. There's a new report. 16, isn't it 1622 or 23?
I'm also wondering if they're no-showed, is that just like a same day in 470 type enrollment? And in that case, I don't know that you would expect them to be included on every report. And I'm just not sure what you're looking for, Larney.
Arnie, if you want to add any more information, go ahead. Both in 470.
Yeah, so based on the report specs that Paul has on the screen, the N470 should show up on your 1622 or 1623, as long as it met those criteria, including the SPED records. Yeah, 1623, I think is going to give you what you need. That's going to be the student list and form 1622. But oops, we need to unmute Brandy.
Hi there.
Hey, Brandy.
Okay, so one of the issues with 1623 is that it will not show any students that don't have an overlapping enrollment with a particular status. And in these cases, the N470s, they won't show up on there because there is no overlapping enrollment technically, particularly if the N470 has an exit date 1 day prior to the enrollment date. So the best thing to do, Larnie, is if you've got a lot of these kids, then what I would advise is that you download a ODS extract for the SENR and then download the associated SWDS extract and do a comparison for those students with N470 exit. So, and by the way, we realize that using the N470 in these situations where students have to be assessed is not sustainable. So we are right now discussing options for how we're going to handle these situations in the future. One of the current proposals is a new enrollment status that you would use rather than using an N470 as a no-show to assess folks. Nice to see everybody too.
Thank you, Brandy.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Q1 from Solange. We are getting the CERT 97 missing Title I assistant program records error. This is our first year getting the error for our community day schools. We are in a Title I school-wide district, but our CDS school has not been marked in CARS as school-wide approved this year, nor in the previous years, and we have not had to add the Title I targeted program records for the individual students that attended the school site. Why are we getting this error when in previous years we did not? How do we know which students to assign to the targeted Title I targeted program records? Rebecca has some good information here. If you haven't already, you may want to connect with your CBO or state or federal director and ask them to take a look at the CONAP that was due via CARS. Scroll to page 66, and here's an example. She's put a link in. Uh-oh. Solange says she has been in contact with her CBO and is stumped.
Usually I see that when they haven't certified their CONAP yet. So they've input all the information but haven't clicked the certify button, and then you have to wait overnight for CalPEDS to get that information.
All right. Okay, so hopefully that's the issue.
And if you verify that it is certified and you still have it, put in a ticket for us and we will work with CDE to chase that down for you.
Okay, next one. Uh-oh, let's see. Matt's typing an answer to the next one.
I didn't want to press send because I was worried the question would disappear on you, Gary.
Okay. Okay, for Stephanie, if the work-based learning type 10 internship is submitted with no hours, will that trigger a fatal error? And Matt typed the answer.
So yes, it triggers the WBLR 562, which is missing work-based learning hours external. The work-based learning hours external are required for work-based learning types 10, 15, and 20. So if you ever populate the work-based learning type with 10, which is the internship code, you will always need to input the hours. That's one of the validations that CalPADS will always check with that code.
Perfect, thanks, Matt. Lauren, you have a Q2. I'm just going to go ahead since we don't have that many questions. Is there any documentation regarding the graduation waiver for students with a Y in the waiver field in SENR? Are these students that were graduated with the state minimum or foster youth credit requirement, which is 130, or are there any other waiver circumstances that we need to report a Y on the waiver field for the graduated student?
Marnie, are you asking about the graduation exemption indicator?
Yes, and Rebecca put up a Flash 260 link.
Yeah, so it's that they met all the state graduation requirements, but not necessarily your local ones. That's when you flag that they were granted that exemption. And the ed code is in probably that flash that Rebecca has, but I can pop the ed code in there for you too.
Here's the information from the Flash. And Rebecca also put a link for a cheat sheet with the ed code. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. She's our savior.
Yes. Q1 from Jennifer. I have an error for an end of year, an SCSC 0139E1. The course code is the 9130 with the subcategory of language 1. Why would I get this error? Nope, that's not it.
Well, the SCSC 0139E1 error means that your student course section record and does not correspond with a course section record. So there's going to be 5 fields that need to be validated. School of Course Delivery, the academic year ID, the local course ID, the course section ID, and the academic term code. Most often, the local course ID, the course section ID, and the academic term code don't match. So if you want to troubleshoot it, you can go from the data discrepancy screen and click the link of the SSID. That'll take you to the student profile screen. Open the container for your SCSE records. There will be missing fields when you look at the student's records. The course section ID, the academic term code, and the local course ID. Some of that data will be missing. You can compare that, whatever's there, usually the local course ID. You search that local course ID on the course data screen, and you'll be able to look at the record side by side and find out where's the discrepant data. Like I said, most of the time it's either the course section ID or the academic
Maybe
term
term.
code.
Yep.
There's
Thanks, Nate.
also cases where all 5 fields will match, but you still get the error. And if that happens, it's a timing issue. It means you posted the student course section file before you posted the course section file, and you can't submit those out of order. So if all 5 of those fields match, the guidance is to delete the original SCSC records, post the CRSC records, and then re-upload the SCSC records in order to avoid the error due to timing.
And Jennifer, if it's still, if you're still having problems with that, go ahead and submit a ticket. You can put my name on it. I'm pretty good at resolving those, finding those little differences if you're not able to resolve it. And Kyron's also typing something, so I'll let Kyron close that one out. And it is 3:31 and we are out of questions. We have Dominic and Brandy here from SPED, so if you guys have any SPED questions, we can. Okay. Question 1 from Rigoberto. Hi team. When a user has a sync view access granted, what does that look like on the user's end? Is it via online maintenance incident data? You can under online maintenance and then incident data, you should be able to see if you have incident IDs, you can put those in, or if you don't, and you just put in your reporting LEA and apply filters, it'll list all of your incidents. And that person should be able to see the incidents.
I would imagine, Rigoberto, that if you're going to give them sync view access, you'd also want to give them.
SIRS and SOF.
Yeah, thank you, Gary.
From Terry, Q1, how are courses from out of country reported? Are they reported in CalPads?
No.
No. Thanks, Angela. Q1 from Mahia. If a student transfers into my district with an unassigned IEP, is my district responsible to getting the IEP signed, or do we need to draft a new offer?
That is, so if it was held by the previous district and the parent hasn't signed an agreement, then nothing has really been implemented. So I think you need to pursue either working towards agreement on that plan that was offered, or if they want to hold if the IEP team agrees to hold something further, something along those lines. But yeah, it would be up to you where the student is enrolled to resolve the IEP. I'm watching Brandy to see if I'm giving an answer.
Yep, thumbs up. All right.
Well, since we have a few minutes, can I give a plug? If you haven't already, please do take a few minutes to fill out our satisfaction survey for the service desk. That's closing on Friday. Thank you for those of you that have already filled that out, but that data is very important to us as we work on our continual service improvement. So June 12th, it went out from the CalPEDS desk.
Okay. And Larnie has a Q3 for Brandy and Dominic. Can I ask what reports am I going to use to verify the student with disabilities or SWDS for graduates who earned a regular diploma? How about those who receive certificates?
Oh, I'm still unmuted. Excellent. You could download a SWIDS extract and compare that to your 1623 to make sure that because 1623 is going to show you your enrollment exit information as well. So you can match that against the SWIDS extract to make sure that the most recent, if that updates to not eligible / no longer eligible, confirming that effective date is after their last enrollment date.
And Larnie, the other place that you can verify it is reports 122 and 123, right? Using the students with disabilities filters on those reports, those are graduates and completers.
Righty. Q1 from Marisa. I missed the SPED office hours on Monday. Was there any additional information regarding the removal of service location 570 from SACE as of 7/1/25? I am concerned about the transfer of students between my LEAs and the adoption of those plans that have 570, and potentially these plans not being accepted by CalPEDS at the start of the 25-26 school year.
Remember that if you're adopting a plan and that plan effective start date is 7/1 or after, and you've got a service location of charter school. And just by the way, anecdotally, the reason we retired that particular service location code, which is charter school, the reason we retired it was because charter schools are essentially public schools and it was redundant information. We have information based on where the student's going to school that it is actually a charter school, right? So we don't need you to tell us that the service location is a charter school. So instead you would use public school. When you are adopting that plan, modifying that service location code to public school is not an amendment that would require a parent signature because it's essentially synonymous. We just retired it. So if you're adopting it, the plan effective start date is 7/1 or greater. And Dominic, we definitely want to cover this in the Q&A on Monday. If you're adopting it and the plan effective start date is 7/1 or after, you want to make sure before you send that amendment up that you modify 570 to public.
All right, thank you. Q1 from David. I can't get the 5.8 and 5.9, which are the former Foster reports, I believe, to load. I am running out of time to download these reports. Is this a known issue or an issue specific to my LEA?
If you exited the students, it's an ODS report. So if you exited the students, it's not going to pull. We usually give out a warning telling you to pull these reports in your DC list at the start of end of year. So
And
hopefully
I think
you
it's a little bit different. And this David's from Los Angeles Unified, and I think he's probably saying that the report itself won't even render. Not that there's
typical.
no not that there's no students on it. So David, if you could put in a ticket for me, ask for me, I will ask a DBA to run those on the back end for you, and I'll pop them into your secured CSIS folder.
And Nate, just to clarify, they will generate students if they have an E155 or E156, correct? Okay.
Yeah, correct. Yes.
Any other exit. Okay.
Q2 from Rigoberto, a follow-up. If we don't use if we don't give a user the SIRS or soft view, are those modules not available on a student's CalPADS page? Our team is curious on how we can experiment with what roles and accesses we grant to our school staff and what that looks like on their end. I'm also not 100% confident SIRS and soft view is an available role to assign.
He's right. Those are not discrete roles. So sync covers all three file types.
Oh, okay, good to know. So there's a description of all the roles somewhere in the user manual. Right, there we go. That can be helpful, and he's got it. Okay, Q1 from Eva. For report 8.1 for students to be listed, must they be enrolled with an LEA on census day? I have a student who doesn't show up, but I'm not sure if it's because they're TK or not enrolled with us on census day. So if it's the 8.1 for fall 1, it would be for census day. If it's the end 8.1 for end of year, they wouldn't have to be enrolled on census day. If they're not showing up, there might be other. It should show TK through 12th grade, so that shouldn't matter. We might want to take it on this one too, just to try and find out why the student's not showing up. Is it an end of year 8.1?
In EOI 3, it's a reporting period, so it's July 1st to June 30th of the academic
Okay.
year. It could be that they're TK. This academic year in 24-25, the cutoff for TK students is, I believe, the 5th birthday honor after June 2nd, although somebody may need to fact check me on that one. So there will be discrepancies, between reports if they're counting ADA versus total enrollments there. So 8.1 in end of year 3 is meant to display data as of July 1st of the previous calendar year to June 30th of the current calendar year. But 8.1 in fall 1 is a report as of census day.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Q1 from Rochelle. In response to the CRSC 548E1 warning regarding a missing staff assignment record, it was previously advised last week that to add the appropriate staff assignments so that they match. Given that these assignments are typically reported during fall 1, would this necessitate a recalculation of FTEs? I have a teacher who was originally assigned to 2 school sites during fall 2. However, she has since taken an additional class at a 3rd site, which has triggered the error. In this case, would it be necessary to recalculate and redistribute the FTE across all 3 sites to reflect their current assignment accurately? We actually put this question to our requirements team, and they basically said it's SAS, staff assignments, not required for end of year 1, and just ignore the warning, and that's why it's a warning. Q2 for me, Ethan. The CERT 127 FAQ, Paul linked in the chat, refers to the possibility of an expulsion being carried out in the subsequent academic year. If we decide that's what's happening here for our student voted for expulsion after the last day of school, what do we need to submit to CalPADS this year and next year for the student to indicate this happened? I think you still put in, and I don't know if I know the whole answer to this, but maybe part of it. You still put the incident in the year it happened. You can put multiple results. If there's a suspension and also an expulsion, you can add that. For next year, I don't think you would put anything for the incident as far as the expulsion. I'm not sure what else we're looking for here.
You can't even submit a task because you need an enrollment next year.
Right.
So it's just the incident.
Yeah.
I was trying to rack my brain to remember to remember what we decided for this, but I haven't been paying attention to any of this anymore. So
He's looking for a bit more guidance around expulsions voted after the last day of school. I know in FAQ is about as much as we've had, and that usually answers the question.
So, and even remember that the timeline that we're looking at is incidents and their dispositions that occurred between 7/1 and 6/30. So even if school let out in May, but by 6/30, that expulsion was ordered or the decision to expel was made by the board, then you would list the expulsion. And in terms of reporting an expulsion next year, you could not report that expulsion next year. Like Kyron said, you could report days not attended, and actually that's related to suspension, I believe.
So there is an FAQ that asks, how should the duration be determined for an expulsion? So it should be reported as the count of school days from the time the local governing board voted to expel the student, and between that and the time the school year ends. So the duration should be reported possibly as 1, because the school year ended on the day that the decision was made by the school board.
Yeah, that's what I eventually replied in that thread. It would either be 1. I wasn't sure if duration could be 0.
It can,
So if it
but you
could
have
be,
to put in a modification category.
and I think with CERT 127, I think it triggers on the stats, and since it was after the school year ended, that wouldn't trigger at all.
Right.
Okay. Hopefully that helped answer your question, Ethan. Duration can't be negative. It could be 0, but can't be negative.
Yeah, I'm just apprehensive about 0. I don't know the modification
He's going to try 1.
categories.
He says he's going to probably try 1, and they're putting in a ticket.
Yeah, the modification categories are enforcement suspended, which means that the enforcement of that expulsion they decided not to enforce it. The second would be shortened, which you could technically use in this situation. And then the other one is no modification.
Okay, we got about 10 minutes left. Any more questions? Q2 from Shelley. I believe this has come up in the past years, but it's worth bringing up again. Is it possible to remove the CRSC 548E1 as an error since SAS is not required during end of year 1? Well, I know it's a warning, so it won't affect certification. I see some of the requirements. They wrote something. So let me look. I think I have an email. Since we got some time here, and that's 48. So this is what requirements answered when we asked the question. The intent was to keep displaying the DD warning in both fall 1 and end of year as a helpful heads up that there's an SEID with no assignment. While users don't need to submit the SAS in end of year, we don't prevent them from doing so. And the warning gives them a chance to double check or just ignore it for end of year. So that's straight from an email from requirements about this one.
So before we get any more questions, I just kind of wanted to let folks know if there are special education folks still on the call. We're getting ready to send out I'll send out a message to SELPA directors next week, but my team is working really hard on a data quality analysis. You got something similar for fall one, but it basically looks at anomalies related to special education that we can see that aren't necessarily enforced within the CalPADS validations. And so some of these data quality analysis anomalies that we're finding may require help from your student information system coordinator, right? Because a lot of them have to do with enrollments. A lot of them have to do with demographic records, etc. And so just wanted to make all of you aware that these are not validations in CalPADS. They're additional data quality validations that my team is doing to ensure that LEAs are made aware of anomalies that may affect their special education monitoring and reports for next academic year based on their end of year certification. So just know that that is coming the first week in July. We expect to send those data quality analysis anomalies out. And I'm saying this for the benefit of the service desk, who will be getting tickets about it. And if you see any of those, just forward them on to our team.
We'll be happy to. Thank you. Question Q1 from Anush. I have a restraint after the end of our school year, part of an NPS extended school year. When do I report it and how?
So Anush, if the restraint happened between 7/1 and 6/30, you should report it in this academic year. So I realize it's an extended school year, it is past, but I believe that you can report incidents outside of an enrollment window. And that's actually by design.
Okay.
You just have to have had an enrollment for that student within the academic year. And anybody who knows different because something has changed, please let me know.
Okay. And Diana's asking, as of when are the quality data reports?
They will be based on ODS data. This is really important. They'll be based on ODS data as of the first week in July.
All right. Seems like we still have 10 minutes left. I don't know. I must have been a little early the last time I said 10 minutes. Any more questions? And when will the data quality be due for completion?
Well, I mean, it's by the time you certify, right? So what we're trying to do here is give you time prior to the close of the amendment window. That's really key. If these things aren't fixed by the July certification date, initial certification date, it's okay. We want to give you enough time to get it done by the close of the amendment window, which is August 8th. Okay. So August 8th is the drop dead deadline for getting some of those anomalies fixed. Okay. And the other thing that we're doing in these data quality reports that we have not done before is trend analysis. We're looking at data from last year, data from this year. We're doing a comparison, and we're giving you information that may indicate some sort of data anomaly that you want to check into. It's not necessarily a hard error. Some of these are reasonability checks.
And she says our SPED team is out for the summer break.
Well, that's Yeah, that is definitely a bummer. You know, the SELPA directors are receiving these reports, and you know, we can address this with some of the SELPA.
They do return August 1st.
Yeah, that's not enough time to fix some of these errors. And hopefully, Larnie, yours don't have any data quality issues. Cross our fingers.
Diana has a Q2. Our old SPED reports coming back. Services report was very helpful.
If you're specifically talking about the service report that you guys certified, they will not be coming back in the form of certification reports. We have promised, although it has not been a high priority, we have promised some sort of ODS report that shows service distribution throughout the LEA. I also know that there is a desire to have a report that allows LEAs to use that report for the SELPA's annual service plan. So we're in conversations about that, but that wouldn't be until end of year next year.
Q1 from Orlando, a SPED question. For pre-K children being assessed and turning 3 years old during a time that the school is not in session, for instance, turns 3 on July 23rd, should we use the enrollment date of 7/23?
So the assessment can occur outside of an enrollment period. That's the first thing, right? So a meeting can occur. And so if that meeting was held, you know, at 2 years, 9 months, you could submit that meeting. I would advise, because sometimes the student information systems don't like start dates that fall outside of the school year. So you could use 8/11/2025. I don't see any reason you couldn't use that date. Dominic, are you aware of anything?
No, I agree.
Okay.
I think that that's a fine date for the enrollment start.
Right? Q1 from Bavita. Sorry for the late question. If a student is in 10th grade at a high school and by 12th grade moves to SPED services and does not graduate, will that student count towards that initial high school's dropout rate?
Are we talking about the 4-year adjusted cohort rate?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, it depends. Well, actually, no, on the initial high school, if they transferred out of that high school and there's a T160 in CalPads and they show up somewhere else, then they are now the new high school's responsibility. The ownership of that student's enrollment moves over to high school B there. And then if they move up into grade 12, earn a certificate of completion, whatever it is, and then move into transitional services, that's accounted for on the cohort reports already. There's a special ed certificate of completion count that goes in there. If they were going for a high school diploma and did not graduate, then whatever their final exit code would determine their cohort outcome. And I think the cohort outcome resources are all attached to the 15.1 and 15.2 report mapping guides. So you can just pull that down and see which exit codes correspond to which outcome code. But that first high school would not even be considered so long as there's a second high school involved.
Thanks, Paul. All right, well, it's 3:58, 2 minutes left. I think if there's no more questions, we'll go ahead and call it today. We will be back again next Wednesday at 3 o'clock. I'd like to thank Brandy and Dominic from CDE SPED office for helping out a great deal today in the Q&A, and also for my teammates and the LEAs out there that always are helpful for our questions as well. We'll be back again next week. And don't forget, office hours are next Monday at 3 o'clock for the SPED team.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.